Now, over the years that I've been introducing Alec to make his conference address, I've said many things about him. I've sung his praises, I've talked up his talents, and occasionally I've told you one or two of his secrets. Well, today I'm going to share with you another of his secrets. You see, it turns out that the First Minister has something in common with one of the world's biggest celebrities. Now, this might surprise you, but our First Minister shares many attributes with Beyoncé. Now, I know what you're thinking. Of course he does. After all, we all know he's got an excellent singing voice, or rather he thinks he's got an excellent singing voice. Or maybe it's the sense of style and fashion. We did, after all see that picture with the shocking pink berry and the shades last week. But it's not either of those things. It's actually something that I'm sure you've all noticed at this conference: Alex Salmond's new slimline physique. Now, some people think he's been taking his diet tips from the former Governor of the Bank of England, Mervyn King. But I can exclusively reveal to you today that Alex Salmond is on the same diet as Beyoncé. And I'm sure you agree with me that he is looking very good on it. Conference, he is our #1. He's fighting fit for the independence referendum. Give a resounding welcome to our First Minister, Alex Salmond.
Well, friends, on behalf of Beyoncé and myself, Nicola's very kind, of course, but I think my diet's a bit like the cause of Scottish independence. We've travelled a substantial way, but we've still got a job to do. But we are entering a new chapter in our nation's history. In less than 1 year's time, the people of Scotland will have the opportunity of a generation. Now, that opportunity on September the 18th, 2014 is this: to build a prosperous country, to create a just society, to become an independent country. Now, for supporters across this land, this is the campaign we've been working to all of our lives. It's a time for anticipation, but it's also one for reflection. And reflection in particular on the efforts of those who gave so much. Great colleagues who've died just in recent years, such as Billy Wolfe, Alan McCartney, Margaret Ewing, Neil McCormack, Bashir Ahmed, Jimmy Reid, and many, many others. And even more recently, Kay Matheson, Alison Hunter, Brian Adam, MSP. Now, it was an honour to speak at Brian's funeral in Aberdeen in the summer as we celebrated the contribution of that outstanding human being. Now, we all know that Brian Adam did an enormous amount to encourage and inspire young people, particularly those from overseas, to come to Scotland and get involved in politics. Conference, therefore, I'm delighted to announce that the SNP's internship programme in the Scottish Parliament will now be dedicated in Brian Adams' memory. Because we are standing on the shoulders of giants who kept the Scottish flame alive, and how they would have relished the next 11 months. So let's keep these colleagues in our hearts as we remember how lucky we are to live in this moment. And let's use their inspiration to secure Scotland's place as a full and independent member of the community of nations. But friends, a yes vote is not about a victory for the Scottish National Party, or even a victory for the wider Yes campaign, or even for that huge coalition of interest and enthusiasm supporting the Yes vote. It will be, above all, an act of national self-confidence and national self-belief. We, the people of Scotland, have by far the greatest stake in its success, and we are by far the best place to take decisions about our future. Now, I know that people at home, watching right now and across the country, want to know more about independence. They want to hear about the benefits. They are hungry for information, and we have undertaken to provide that information. Because delegates, we know that more people know about independence, the more likely they are to vote yes. Last month, broadcast debates were held to mark a year to go to the referendum itself. The audiences were balanced between those in favour of independence, those against, and those undecided. The significant thing is this. At the end of a couple of these debates, having heard the arguments, people were then asked how they would vote. Result on both occasions? A majority for independence. Why? Because when people hear the can-do optimism of the Yes campaign against the can't-do dirge of the No campaign, then they vote yes. Now, just a few weeks ago, students at Abertay University were invited to listen to Stuart Hosey debate Lord George Robertson. I'm told that 200 turned up. Stuart's a big draw. Now, at the start of that debate, 59% were no voters, 21% were yes. After hearing Stuart and Lord George, 51% yes, 38% no, a swing by my calculations of 25%. It must have been a bit of a shock for Lord George. He did predict once, if I remember correctly, that devolution would kill the SNP stone dead. According to George, we should all be past tense by now. Well, I've got a message for Lord George and the No campaign. The SNP are the majority government of Scotland. The movement for national self-determination is alive and well, and we intend to win this referendum. Now, for many people, perhaps for most people, it's the economic issues, bread and butter issues, that matter most. We've all heard the question, can Scotland afford to be independent? And the independence debate will always be hard fought on both sides, but on this central issue of whether Scotland could be a successful independent country, there is in fact no longer any real debate. Just ask the senior figures in the No campaign. Prime Minister says, quote, "It would be wrong to suggest that Scotland could not be another successful independent country." Alistair Darling says the question is not whether Scotland can survive as an independent country. Of course it could, says Alistair Darling. I don't make a habit of agreeing with the Prime Minister and Alistair Darling. These days I just let them agree with each other. But in these statements, they are undoubtedly correct, and here is why. Scotland is a country rich and fortunate in both human talent and natural resources. We have more top universities per head than any other country in the world. Our food and drink industry is entering a golden era. Scotland has been declared the world's top travel destination for this year. Foreign investment is at a 15-year high. Wind, wave, tidal energy can make Scotland the green energy powerhouse of Europe for decades to come. We are a hotbed of life science innovation. Delegates, let's resolve this over this next year. Let's never allow any of our opponents of independence to diminish or talk down the prospects for this country or the abilities of our people. And let's look and laugh at all that day-tripping of UK cabinet ministers coming up to tell us that the 10 plagues of Egypt would descend upon an independent Scotland. Mind you, you don't have to be a London minister to make a fool of yourself in Scottish geography. I'm grateful for today's Herald newspaper for pointing out that Danny Alexander yesterday announced a fuel discount scheme for 2 Highland villages. That's great. Problem is, they no longer have filling stations. Only the Liberal Democrats. However, thinking in terms of the Westminster barrage, the Prime Minister's position is surely now untenable. He promised Scotland a respectful debate, but then he turns the full guns of the Whitehall machine on Scotland. He wants to dictate the terms of the debate without, of course, debating himself. He wants the power without the democratic responsibility, and that is simply not on. So here's the deal. So here's the deal, Prime Minister. We'll publish the White Paper, then you and I must debate. Prime Minister to First Minister. The choice is yours. Step up to the plate or step out of the debate. And after that, I'll take on whichever of your substitutes you care to put up. But here's some facts that are certainly worth debating. For every one of the last 30 years, Scotland has generated more tax per head than the UK as a whole. Without one single penny from the North Sea, our national income per head is virtually identical to the UK. With oil, our economy is almost 1/5 bigger, and we produce 6 times as much oil as we need. North Sea oil and gas is a huge bonus. Not, however, according to the No campaign. They depict a continuing asset with a wholesale value of £1.5 trillion as something else, as a national catastrophe. Perhaps it's because they're embarrassed. Well, so they should be. There are only 2 countries in the world with the great fortune of having huge oil resources who have failed to establish a savings fund for benefit future generations, the UK and the Republic of Iraq. Vast oil wealth is not the problem for Scotland. The problem for Scotland is that for 40 years Westminster has squandered that amazing bonus and oil wealth. And this takes us, does it not, to the very heart of the independence debate. No one really doubts that Scotland could be independent. The debate is about whether Scotland should be independent. Now, those running the official campaign against the proposition call themselves Project Fear. For the term Project Fear is not some insult dreamt up by the Yes campaign. It is a self-description. That's right, the No campaign actually described themselves as Project Fear. Labour's health spokesman, Andy Burnham, captured the mood of that moment. Last month, he actually said he is opposed to independence because he doesn't want to drive up the M6, get out of his passport, start driving on the right when he comes to Scotland. That's strange. I thought that Labour had been driving on the right for some time. Now, Mr Burnham's suggestion is a worthy addition to all the rest. The mobile phone charges, the annexation of Faslane, embassies refusing to hold whisky receptions. Project Fear? More like Project Farce. Now, the real question, the central question of the coming campaign is who should be taking decisions about Scotland? Those who live and work here or Westminster politicians? It's a common-sense argument which is based on our experience. The record of Scotland's Parliament demonstrates that it's undeniably the case that decisions should be taken here. Free personal care, supported unanimously by every party in the Parliament. The groundbreaking ban on smoking in public places, protecting our National Health Service from privatisation. Access to education based on the ability to learn, not the ability to pay. A 38-year low in recorded crime and a record number of police officers on our streets. And the council tax freeze, saving hard-pressed families in Scotland £1,200 when just about every other household bill is rising. Friends, where we have the power, we have chosen a different path, a path that reflects Scotland's social democratic consensus, our shared progressive values, our priorities as a society. Now, Labour and Tory dismiss these gains as luxuries of a something-for-nothing country. Really? Personal care for older people, tuition for young people to be cast aside as something for nothing? This is not a something-for-nothing country, but a something-for-something society, and this party will defend the social progress made by our Parliament. The point is this, that with just a taste of independence, we've been able to deliver fair policies than elsewhere in these islands. With a measure of independence on health and education and law and order, we've sought to make Scotland a better place. So let's consider what we can achieve by extending our power over the things we don't currently control. Our welfare system, our economy, our energy supplies, our international security. Because there is no doubt that we are paying a heavy price for Westminster decisions. On Wednesday, I met with the Prime Minister in London at the Joint Ministerial Committee. I want to give you a taste of three aspects of that meeting, to give an idea of the difference of perspective between the governments, not just between the governments, but between the political cultures in these islands. Youth unemployment, perhaps the fundamental issue facing society as we move out of recession. Scotland is the only country in Europe with a dedicated youth employment minister in Angela Constance. We have a youth guarantee in Scotland that any youngster between the ages of 16 to 19 without a job, education or training gets the offer of help within 4 months. It's quick intervention and it's effective. Now, there's a European proposal to extend this. Westminster opposes it, not because it's not a good idea, but basically because it's a European idea. We need the freedom to respond to European initiatives in the best way for Scotland, not to have a proposal and training for youngsters distorted through a Eurosceptic lens. So I'm delighted to announce a further initiative today. The allocation of a £60 million package supporting 43 projects across the country, supporting more than 3,000 jobs. Friends, from the development of a new gateway to Wester Ross to an investment fund in Fife, all of these projects will support vital opportunities for our young people. And do you know what? The fact that it comes from the European initiative is something that will not concern the young people who are benefiting one jot. We shall not allow action on youth unemployment to be restricted by the parochial insularity of Westminster politicians. And then at the Joint Ministerial Committee, we had a discussion on the great sporting and cultural events being held on these islands. The Olympic Games was a great event. The Derry Londonderry Cultural City is a great event. The Commonwealth Games will be a great event. But one of the many reasons we all feel positive about Glasgow 2014 is that we are not financing a great Games out of money which should be going to good causes. More than a year after the Olympics, Scottish good causes are still waiting for the promised return of £114 million of lottery funding which was diverted to fund the London Games. Now, in contrast, every penny piece of funding from the Commonwealth Games and its legacy is being delivered by the Scottish Government, the City of Glasgow and commercial sponsorship, and it will be the greatest sporting event that Scotland has ever seen. The third subject came up was the bedroom tax, unforgivably targeted at some of the most vulnerable in our society. Delegates, in the 1990s, the poll tax became a symbol of why devolution was necessary. The bedroom tax is becoming a symbol of why independence is necessary. Remember, it was opposed by 90% of Scottish MPs in the House of Commons, yet it still passed and now penalises 80,000 households in Scotland, 80% including a person with a disability. In August, it was condemned by a special rapporteur of the United Nations. The chairman of the Conservative Party said it was disgraceful that she was commenting. That's not the disgrace. The disgrace is that a United Nations representative was forced to comment on an injustice in 21st century Scotland. That's the disgrace. So, delegates, let us be clear. One of the first acts of the SNP and the government of an independent Scotland will be to scrap the bedroom tax. The Edinburgh playwright David Gregg says the independence debate allows us to explore every aspect of our national life and ask ourselves the question, does it have to be like this? I don't believe it does. 4 years ago, the previous Labour Westminster government attempted to sell off the Royal Mail. These plans at the time were fiercely resisted in Scotland and elsewhere, and rightly so. But this month, we were reminded of a painful lesson. Regardless of what people think in Scotland or believe, if Westminster is determined to sell off Scotland's public assets, then they will find a way. In the face of massive public opposition and ignoring the wishes of almost all Scottish MPs, our postal service was privatised by a government we didn't even elect. Now, they hailed the sale of a profitable business at a knockdown price as a good thing. It's the equivalent, actually, of selling £10 notes for a fiver and calling it a success. And it's the latest instalment of Westminster's privatisation obsession. Now, where we as a government have the powers to protect our services, we have succeeded. Despite privatisation elsewhere in the UK, Scottish Water remains in public hands, and lo and behold, Scotland now has the lowest average household water bills in these islands. Conference, if we can make a success of Scottish Water, we can make a success of the Royal Mail. If elected in an independent Scotland, I give this pledge. The SNP government would bring the Royal Mail back into public hands. In a properly run democracy, governments exist to reconcile collective action and individual aspiration. An effective water service, a socially committed postal service are essential platforms which allow business to grow and communities to prosper. Scots are famed across the world for our entrepreneurial spirit. We don't need lectures on entrepreneurialism, but the Westminster economic system ain't working for Scotland. The difference in economic performance between areas is greater in the UK than in any other European nation. It has created one of the biggest gaps between rich and poor in the developed world, the fourth most unequal society on the OECD. Now, that means that people from ordinary backgrounds find it harder to get on and to get good jobs. And it means something else. That sense of inequality offends the very basis of a good society. It fosters division, it stifles ambition. No independent Scottish government would ever accept such an appalling waste of talent and potential. So there is a choice, and it's a choice between two futures. We can accept our status as an economic region of an unbalanced and unequal system, or embrace the powers of a national economy, the power to compete, to grow businesses here in Scotland, to attract headquarters, to ensure our best and brightest can realise their ambitions in their own country if they so choose. That is the economic prize of independence. Friends, the Grangemouth refinery has been in existence for 90 years. I grew up as a boy in Linlithgow, and all of my life I've been conscious of the fires of Grangemouth. But right now, that plant is idle and cold. And as the standoff continues, the threat to Grangemouth grows. So let us inject some common sense into this position. To the Union, drop any strike threat. To the management, fire up the plant and then negotiate against the background of a working facility, not one which is in mortal danger. Find common ground. So let us be quite clear. Scotland wants to see Grangemouth operating and the people of Grangemouth working. Fire up the plant and do it now. Friends, no one in this party claims that in an independent Scotland will be able to wish away global competition. We will still be affected by it, influenced by it, and often challenged by it. No one in this world owes Scotland a living. But there is a difference which can make the difference. An independent Scotland will have the Parliament with the full range of powers, and the people will have a government which is on their side. Delegates, right now, a Westminster government that people in Scotland overwhelmingly rejected is giving tax cuts to millionaires at the same time as cutting the income of the lowest paid. In contrast, almost a year ago, the Scottish Government announced we were bringing forward a new living wage of £7.45 an hour. That covers the 160,000 people in Scotland working for central government, our agencies and our National Health Service. It's part of what we call the social wage, the contract between the people of Scotland and their government. It affords people the opportunity to provide for themselves and their families. With independence, we should have the aspiration to achieve a living wage for all workers, not just those under the responsibility of government. And yesterday, Nicola explained how we intend to encourage the private sector to move towards the living wage. And today, I can announce further steps in achieving that ambition. Around 70,000 people in Scotland currently receive the minimum wage. In real terms, the minimum wage has failed to increase in almost a decade. Indeed, in every single year since the recession started in 2008, that minimum wage has failed to keep up with the cost of living. If elected, on independence, the Scottish Government would establish a Fair Work Commission. The central power of that commission will be to set a minimum wage guarantee. I can announce today that this guarantee will ensure that the minimum wage rises at the very least in line with inflation. Let us pledge that never again will wages of the lowest paid in Scotland fail to keep up with the cost of living. If that had been enforced over the last 5 years, that independence guarantee, the lowest paid Scots would today be a total of £675 better off. Friends, work should pay, and we must ensure that work pays by raising the skills and rewards of labour, not by reducing people to penury and despair. As we move into this crucial year for Scotland, we accept, indeed we relish, the challenge to furnish the people of Scotland with the information necessary to assess the opportunities of independence. I can therefore announce that the Scottish Government will publish the White Paper on Independence on Tuesday, the 26th of November. And above all, the White Paper shall do two things. First, it will spell out the platform that we will establish for Scotland between the referendum next year and the first elections for an independent Scottish Parliament in the spring of 2016. It will therefore be clear that independence is not at its heart about this party or this administration or this First Minister, but about fundamental democratic choice for Scotland, the people's right to choose a government of their own. And secondly, the White Paper will set out our vision for Scotland, the why of independence, the Scotland that we seek. We seek a country with a written constitution protecting not just the liberties for the people, but enunciating the rights of the citizen. We seek a country where we make work pay not by those with disabilities, but by strengthening the minimum wage. We seek a country where key public services remain in public hands. We seek a country where business prospers, but where the public are protected against the abuse of monopoly power. We seek a country where the right to health and education are based on human need and ability, not on the size of your wallet. We seek a country which understands its contribution to culture and creativity as part of an international framework. And we seek a country which judges its contribution on how useful it can be to the rest of humanity, not on how many warheads it can dance on a Trident submarine. The late great Ian Banks said once that independence would boost the morale of the nation. He wrote of what he believed would be the sheer energisation of a whole people. That energy can be felt already across Scotland. People are starting to imagine a better life, better communities, a better country. We are truly privileged. In less than 1 year's time, we can stop imagining and we can start building. Building the Scotland we know is possible, and we should remember as we do so that Scotland has been on a home rule journey for more than a century. Twice in the recent chapters of that story, the people have been asked the question yes or no, and twice they have said yes, once narrowly and once overwhelmingly. So it's our privilege in this generation to determine the next chapter of that story. And when the pages of books yet unwritten speak to generations yet unborn of this time and this place of our Scotland today, what is the story they'll tell? They can say that we who lived at this special time recognised the priceless moment for what it was, that those who saw this chance did not balk at it, that those who were given this moment did not let it pass by, that we, Scotland's independence generation, reached out and grasped the opportunity of a lifetime when it came our way. We will not, in the morning of the 19th September next year, wake up and think to ourselves what might have been. We shall wake up that morning, filled with hope and expectation, ready to build a new nation which is both prosperous and fair. After almost a century of Scotland moving forward to this very moment, let us ask ourselves these simple questions. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? Friends, we are Scotland's independence generation, and our time is now. Yeah.